Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the Rock Podcast. For those about to pod, we salute you. On this week's episode, Matt and I will be discussing our year in rock is 2006. We will also be discussing some of our favourite venues. And we will have our usual news and hidden gems. If you like the show, please subscribe and also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts as well too. That helps us get the message out there for the podcast. But before we go any further, let me introduce to you my partner in podcasting, Mr. Matt Rogers. Hey Matt, how you doing?
Hi Brian. Well done, nailed it in one there. Good lad.
Pressure was on, wasn't it? You nailed it last episode.
Well, you know, I can't think of anything to say. Right, so you.
So, what's caught your eye in the news since we last spoke? What's going on in the world of rock?
Well, do you remember last time we were talking? We were talking about the fact that a piece of Kurt Cobain's hair was coming up for sale.
You didn't buy it, did you?
It's gone to auction. No, I didn't buy it. No, I've got plenty of hair of my own. Thank you.
Oh,
I don't need anyone else's. Anyway, it went up. It did indeed go up for auction, and it sold for about £10,000, just shy of £10,000, which is quite phenomenal when you think about it. And then a footnote to that is that a self-portrait that Kurt Cobain drew in, I think it's about 1991 or so. It's during 1992. It was during the Nevermind album era. And I've seen this self-portrait, and I mean, it's pretty horrible. It's like, I mean, it looks like a 5-year-old's drawn it with their eyes closed. I think that was the intention, to be honest.
Right, okay.
But anyway, this self-portrait of sorts is expected to sell for $20,000 when it goes to auction. And normally those estimates get exceeded or are exceeded. So I'd be interested to see how that plays out. But what it made me think, I wonder if this person who's selling this stuff has sort of had a bit of a clear out and thought, oh, hang on, what's this? Oh, yeah, just a portrait. Oh, and I've got this lock of hair as well. That's Kurt's. And of course, that had, as we said last time, a certificate of authenticity, as the self-portrait probably does as well. But I thought that's a bit, yeah, it's good. So it's 25 years since, that's more than 25 years since Kurt Cobain died. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, Kurt Cobain will always be an icon, always be one of those, you know, short-lived career. Sadly, as we said before, died very young. And therefore his kind of iconic status will live on, especially as people are buying his locks of hair and self-portraits and so on.
Do you know what? I actually think that's quite cheap. If you've got,
no, you're not gonna buy that, are you?
No.
That picture.
No. I'm just bear with me on this.
Right.
Is you're actually going to have, if it's got the right, you know, let's use the proper, if it's got the right. Is it Covenants? You know, or
you're thinking of David Covenants from Whitesnake. You know, the right Providence.
Provenance. That's the word. Provenance.
Not David Providence. No, the right Providence.
So if it's an original, it's a one-off Kurt Cobain, and it's not a print. So if you've got an original drawing by Kurt Cobain, it's a true one-off, and it's going to go for $10,000. You can buy, and this is what a lot of artists, you know, think of musicians who are great artists. The one that comes to mind is Ronnie Wood.
Yeah.
So Ronnie Wood, you know, you're paying a lot of money for Ronnie Wood's originals and prints, but somebody who's a great artist and has been selling through lockdown his prints for $3,000. This is prints, not originals. John Cougar Mellencamp or John Mellencamp. Really? John Mellencamp has been selling through his Facebook page and his website prints of paintings that he's done for $3,000
Wow.
And plus all of your taxes and deliveries and stuff. So that's a print. And if you're going to get an original Kurt Cobain drawn for 10 grand, I'm kind of going in rock memorabilia. I would, not that I'm saying if I had 10 grand, but if I had it swishing about and I was going to go to invest in something, I'd invest in Kurt's original rather than a print of something. Anyway.
Yeah.
We digress.
Well, yeah, a little bit. You've got some interesting memorabilia, haven't you? What's your most treasured piece of memorabilia? Because I know you've got a lot of picks and drums and signed guitars and whatnot.
Which I have gotten through either paying through it. So I've not stolen anything.
No.
My favorite piece of memorabilia has to be Keith Richards' guitar plectrum.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, that's and the way in which it's Keith's plectrum taken from his guitar, handed to me by his guitar tech, who sadly I knew his name and asked for it very politely, and he handed me one of Keith's plectrums, and it was just right place, right time, in a big, massive stadium, Hampden Park. It just was me. It was just being polite, and I got Keith's plectrum.
Just shows you.
Yeah.
Just shows you.
What about you?
What about my favorite piece of memorabilia?
Yeah.
Well, I went to see UFO in about 2004. They played the Croydon Fairfield Halls in Croydon. That's a good venue. I think Free recorded part of their live album. They're actually Free live. Anyway, so they finished, and I was quite near the front, and I said to Jason Bonham, who was playing the drums at the time for UFO, I called out to Jason, could I have your drumstick, please? And exactly.
Yeah.
Very polite. And he looked a bit strangely, and he looked at it, and he said, "Oh, yeah, right, yeah, sure." And the reason he looked a bit quizzical was because this drumstick was basically like splintered. It's sort of a Harvard drumstick, and they've been sort of cut lengthways.
Yeah.
But I thought, well, it's Jason Bonham, it's John Bonham's son. It's son of rock royalty, and indeed Jason Bonham himself, rock royalty, I would say.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's move on.
Yeah.
Enough waffling about memorabilia and all that sort of stuff.
What else? Anything else in the news for you?
Well, the other thing, yes, thanks for prompting me. The other thing, which of course is big news if you're a rock fan, is the fact that a rock band won the Eurovision Song Contest.
Good, Italy. Yep, absolutely.
The band is called Maneskin. I think that's how you pronounce it, and the song's pretty good.
Very Red Hot Chili Peppers, isn't it? It's quite funk metal. Yeah,
I thought that actually. It's got that kind of rappy Anthony Kiedis style of singing, as you say, pretty funky. But I'll take it. Rock. We're getting exposure, and good on them. So the song that won it in Italian is called Zitti e Buoni, which translates into English means shut up and behave, which I think a lot of school teachers would therefore enjoy that song. Sort of thing. Or indeed parents. That's probably why it won. The title and the sentiment resonated. So so that's quite good, wasn't it? Not the first time that a rock band has won Eurovision, of course, which we'll come on to later.
Okay, let's.
Anyway, how about you? What's caught your eye lately, Bri?
Caught my eye. It seems to be lots of ex-members of big bands have gotten themselves together with new entourages and are putting out some material. So they, I saw on social media this week that KK's Priest, so KK Downing's new band after him leaving Judas Priest, he's put a band together. Album coming out in August this year called Sermon of the Sinner. And they've put a single out called Hellfire Thunderbolt. Ripper Owens is on it, and it's really heavy. It's quite it's good to see KK back. It's a shame that he's not in Priest anymore, but it's kind of going back to that heavier, maybe mid-80s, early 90s Priest, and obviously Ripper Owens has got
ex-singer.
Absolutely.
Priest, of course.
Yeah, so
short-term singer.
and he's done lots. Ripper's done lots of Dio's. He was in Dio Disciples and a few. So that sounded really good. But the one which really interested me, actually, I think you should bear in mind you can name bands better than most people with Matt Sabbath.
Yep. Who can forget Matt Sabbath?
Who can forget Matt Sabbath?
Well, I did until you reminded me. Actually, thank you, Brian.
So Udo Dirkschneider from Accept, as you know, and Udo, whenever Udo left Accept, his band was called Udo.
Yep.
So he's gotten together with a couple of the ex-members of Accept, and his band that they've put together is called Dirkschneider and the Old Gang, which kind of sounds like I've named it. So I think you could probably name it better. So yeah, there's three ex-members of Accept. They've got an album coming out again in August. It's called Arising. And the second single is just out right now, and it's called Face of a Stranger. And it is excellent. It's got 3 singers on it. It's quite melodic for Accept fans. It actually kind of sounds a bit Queensryche in bits. It's got that really heavy, but there's 3 singers on it. There's a girl singer, Udo's singing on it, and I think Udo's son's in the band as well too. But I was really impressed with Dirkschneider and the Old Gang. So looks like lots of ex-members of big bands are getting back out there and putting some new music out, which is really good. That's my news for the week.
No, yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, well, I'll check both those out.
Do
KK's Priest, which is, as you say, several ex-members of Priest, including Les Binks, who left Priest in about 1979. So, going to be interesting. All righty, should we move on?
Yeah, we will indeed, yes.
So last time, I was saying time-honoured fashion. I'm going to stop saying that. So last time you set me the year of 2006.
Yep.
15 years ago. To talk about, which I'm going to. There are a few interesting events that took place in 2006, a few albums, a few gigs I went to as well. I checked out Setlist FM because I've got a terrible memory for years. So I did actually do some preparation for a change, and I went on Setlist FM. And one thing that struck me, actually, looking back to 2006, again, 15 years ago, so you have to bear that in mind, is how many bands that are now huge were playing relatively small arenas in those days.
Okay.
Or indeed, small venues. We'll talk about venues later.
Theaters. Theaters. No, I said theaters.
Okay. Apparently, I say theaters in a strange way, which I can live with. Anyway, so 2006. Yeah. So, as I said earlier, Eurovision had a rock winner in 2006 with Lordi, who were terrifying. I seem to recall. They were kind of Kiss meets Slipknot in a weird sort of monstrous way, and they won that year with a song called "Rock and Roll Hallelujah," which is a nice sentiment, of course. And I watched them again recently, i.e. the footage from 2006, and I was still terrified. I mean, these big monstrous blokes in these outfits. I don't know what became of Lordi.
They're still going. They're still going. Do you remember? It's funny you mentioned Lordi with all of the prosthetics and the plastic. Of the. Do you remember a band that was plastered all over Kerrang in the 80s and 90s called Gwar?
I do remember the name, GWAR.
Yeah, they were always in Kerrang. And whenever I saw Lordi, I thought it was Gwar.
Oh, right, yeah.
It was the same sort of vibe, but yeah, very scary.
Yeah, so that was them. Maybe we should put a Gwar. It's probably pronounced G-War.
Yeah. If we've any fans of Gwar or Gwar, who can let us know what the proper pronunciation of that is, because we want to get it right.
No, it's not a competition, is it?
No.
Phew. No. But you know why?
Because no prizes.
No prize, no budget. Just thought I'd remind everyone about that. Anyway, so Lordi won Eurovision. That was fun. And then I discovered Planet Rock Radio in 2006. I bought my first DAB radio, and I suppose my life has changed, because the thing with the radio station that's dedicated to music, of course, is that they play old stuff and new stuff. As you discover both bands that you know, new bands and acts, and we talked about a few on the podcast. Obviously you can rediscover old bands. So yeah, 2006 was quite an interesting year for me in that respect. And then album wise, there's a few that I remembered. UFO, who I've said many times I'm a big fan of, had an album out called The Monkey Puzzle, which was first album with when Andy Parker rejoined. Andy Parker, the drummer.
Yeah.
It's quite a decent album. A couple of good songs. Hard Being Me is the opening song. It's a good song. I think that might have been the same era that I saw them, as I was saying earlier, the Fairfield Halls. We mentioned the Red Hot Chili Peppers earlier, actually, and they brought out Stadium Arcadium, which is a huge album, and it's pretty good. I mean, It's pretty consistent all the way through, and it sold like 8 million copies that year. I mean, you know, staggering. Because Danny California was the
it's a great video.
Yeah, I don't remember it, to be honest with you.
Oh, check out the video. It's Danny California. They do various pastiches of rock bands. So they'll do like a they'll be like
I remember it now.
Yeah, so they're dressed up like Alice. You know, you've got the Alice
Kiss
Cooper and Kiss and grunge. It's a great video.
Oh yeah, of course. And Stadium Arcadium, the song itself. It's a really good, solid. I think it was like a double CD, something like that. And also Iron Maiden brought out, they're very prolific, Iron Maiden, and they brought out A Matter of Life and Death, which again has got some good stuff on it. My own personal favourite is a song called The Reincarnation of Benjamin Brieg. Check that out. But also Brighter Than a Thousand Suns, These Colours Don't Run, songs that are not quite in their set now, but certainly were for a few years. And Maiden, I was thinking, you know, they're so prolific. They to be fair to them, they do an album every few years, and they intersperse it with live albums and DVDs and so on. So they do look after their fans, which is good. So that was 2006 for albums. Any memories for you, Brian, from that year?
Gigs wise, 2006, Hampden Park for the Rolling Stones, supported by the Charlatans, where I got the plectrum.
Oh, okay.
So that was probably the big gig of the year for me. I remember it. The Stones played brilliantly. I was probably more impressed with the Charlatans. Charlatans were quite very rocky that day. You know, you would probably put the Charlatans in that kind of Brit poppy sort of 90s scene, and I can remember they rocked out that day at Hampden, and the crowd were really, really good. But the Stones were just it was the first time that I'd been to see the Rolling Stones, and they were just were oozed just class, and to play in an arena as well too. And so 2006 for me was probably that was the gig of the year. Music wise, quite an eclectic year for me, and when I was looking at it, there's probably 3 albums that I'll call out that I loved. And interesting, you talked about Planet Rock and it introducing you to new artists. Probably one of my favourite artists that we haven't talked about on the podcast so far, and somebody who you know I admire greatly, is John Mayer.
Yep.
So John Mayer released his third studio album called Continuum in 2006. And I saw John on the Channel 4 programme Live at Abbey Road. And I remember watching it and I was just blown away by John Mayer. So Continuum is an album that I still listen to today. It's one of his best albums. Pino Palladino, amazing studio musician. Mm-hmm. And Steve Jordan played the drums on it. And Steve Jordan's played with everybody. He's mainly played in the Winos. with Keith Richards. So he's good pedigree. So it was pretty much a three-piece. So John Mayer's Continuum. The other album which I'll call out, and I'm actually going to tell you the track that's going onto the playlist. It's one of the Frontier, because Frontiers were probably coming into.
Can I ask you a question about Frontiers? Are you sponsored by them?
I'm not sponsored by them.
Are you sure?
No.
You're commissioned from them?
No. You just know I love AOR and melodic rock. So I'm a massive fan, and I don't think this guy gets as much love and respect as he should do. I love Joe Lynn Turner. And Joe Lynn Turner put out a project in 2006 called Sunstorm. Sunstorm, the track I'm going to put on the playlist is called Love's Gone Wrong. Everybody listen to it. It's just a great song. Jim Peterick from Survivor wrote a lot of the material on it. It's just a great album. It's just a great American rock. It's what you would expect from one of the lead singers from Rainbow. It's just a great album. And the final album I'll mention, which was it's a fun album. It's called Strumming with the Devil.
Oh, yeah.
And it's basically Cajun cover versions of Van Halen.
Oh, yeah.
And David Lee Roth sings on it.
Oh, does he?
He does. And he, honestly, it's got Jump, it's got I'll Wait. I'll put a couple of tracks on it. Yeah. But Strumming with the Devil with David Lee Roth, and it is really Cajun music. But some of those were the three albums that I bought in 2006, which I enjoyed. Which but bit of fun.
Yeah, sounds like it. You just reminded me actually. Something about 2006 was one of our heroes. I actually saw that year in his solo career. It's Paul Rodgers joined Queen.
Oh, really?
Which doesn't seem that long ago, but it was 2000 and it was announced that he was joining Queen as Queen and Paul Rodgers. Yeah, I mean, I quite liked that era of Queen. Not everyone did.
I would be in that category.
Oh, really? Well, that's fine. I mean, yeah. Well, no, I thought he did justice to the Queen songs. If you look at the live material or listen to the live album, Return of the Champions, it's good stuff. And to be fair to them, they did intersperse their sets with Bad Company and free stuff. So they were obviously, very gracious about the great man's legacy and this great man's canon of work. But you just reminded me, I saw Paul Rodgers solo at the Royal Albert Hall, supported by The Answer.
Oh, because Rise came out in 2006, didn't it?
I think it might have done, actually, yeah. But I was there. I remember being there and at the Royal Albert Hall, and The Answer weren't announced as a support act. And as you know, The Answer, great band. From your part of the world, aren't they?
They are, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Amazing seeing Cormac Neeson. Yeah. And anyway, I was in the bar at the Albert Hall because I thought I'd missed the support act, Deborah Bonham. Anyway, so I'm in the bar with my mate Andy Coxedge. Hello, Andy. I was listening. I think it sounds like they got the Answer over the tannoy, over the PA. But they were playing. There were an unannounced support to Paul Rodgers. But that was just one fleeting memory of 2006 while we're on the subject. But it's a good year, I mean, as I said before, all years are good years. Yeah. You can always find something interesting about them. Yeah. So next time, I'm going to set you a year. I'm going to set you a year. You remember how this works, don't you, Brian? Why do I have to remind you every time?
Who knows?
Exactly, you've got those. So next time, I'm going to give you the year to talk about. 1985.
Ooh.
I don't think we've done that before, have we?
No. 1985.
Are Are you all right with that? I just thought that today. I thought I'd just surprise you. We start surprising each other with these years.
1985, of course, 1985. I still would have been walking around Limavady with my denim jacket with Meatloaf on the back, carrying albums about.
Not actually Meatloaf. Let's remind everyone, it wasn't. You weren't giving him a piggyback, were you? Big fella.
Yeah,
you're a stocky guy, but I think carrying Meatloaf might be a challenge.
Yeah. Yes. I'll qualify that. As I was wearing my denim jacket with the cover of Bat Out of Hell sewn into the back of my denim jacket. Is that better?
That's much better. That's much more reassuring than an image of you giving Meatloaf a piggyback ride around Limavady. The talk of the town if that happened. Anyway, what are we talking about? No, 1985. Yeah, so you were still in Limavady. I think we should still ask each other how old we are because
I haven't done that this episode. Have I done that? No.
No, because it makes me feel old when we do that. However, how old were you in 1985?
16.
Oh, there you go. Perfect age.
Sweet 16.
Yes, indeed. Alrighty, so that's 85 next time for you then, Brian.
Thank you.
So when we were looking back at 2006, it made me think about the gigs I've been to and the venues that I went to back in that time, some of which are no longer standing, sadly. And it made me think, well, I wonder what our favourite venues are to watch music, to watch rock music in. There are a lot of varied venues around the country and, it'd be interesting to talk about it. And I was thinking, I went to see, in 2006, Alter Bridge at the Astoria, supported by Shinedown. And the Astoria in Charing Cross Road in London is no more. It was knocked down to make way for HS2, the Crossrail thing across London from Canary Wharf out west. And it's sad, really. And then recently we've had the Borderline in London shut down because they just couldn't keep it going and so on. But anyway, however, I thought we would talk about our favourite venues. And because you're in the Northeast, you've been to venues that I haven't been to.
Yeah.
And similarly, I've probably been to every venue in London there's ever been.
And it was really interesting you talk about venues that closed because I was so pleased that in the 90s when I was at obviously in the 15 years that I was at university,
That's right.
and then it felt like that. As you keep reminding me, I was at university for the whole of the 90s. I do remember at least
you must have enjoyed it. You must have enjoyed it.
I loved it. It felt like 15 years sometimes when I woke up on a morning, but that's for another day. But I remember I actually got to go to the Mayfair. So when you look at some iconic albums and live albums in the northeast of England, I know friends of mine who lived there. Some people got to see AC/DC with Bon Scott playing at the Mayfair, and it was absolutely jam packed. So
that's in Newcastle, isn't it?
That's in Newcastle and Mayfair. So I was really lucky to be able to go to some of the iconic venues, but. Even whilst I was in the northeast of England, the Mayfair quickly turned into more of a nightclubby disco type place, and the live music aspect of it just died away, which is a real shame. But yeah, no, I've got some great venues in the northeast, right through the spectrum. All the way from clubs through to stadiums, etc. So yeah, it's good. It's always been northeast is always a great live music area.
So what do you think makes a good venue then?
Well, when you're as short as I am, and as stocky as you've called me, I'm not offended by that in any way.
That was meant in a nice way.
A good vantage point, even for short people like me, and ultimately the sound.
Yeah.
Those are the two criteria for me. And actually, third, it doesn't smell too bad.
Well, yes, I see what you mean. Yeah. Smell is very important when you go to a gig, isn't it? Oh, my goodness. Talking of smells, do you remember when we went? I think we went to Hammersmith. I can't remember who we went to see, and it was just after the smoking ban had come in Britain, 2007, and back in the day, obviously you could smoke inside venues, and you'd go in and there'd be a cloud of tobacco smoke, over the audience, and everything. People smoking, everything, because you were allowed to.
Yeah.
But then they stopped it, and all of a sudden, the smells that were previously masked by tobacco smoke were now infiltrating your hooter.
Yes.
And some of them weren't very pleasant.
No, not at all.
At all. Let's not go into detail.
No.
But yeah, I know what you mean. It has to smell pleasant. Let's just leave it at that.
It does.
I think we found an optimum level of smell at gigs these days. But I know what you mean. Yeah. I like a nice high stage. I'm like you. I like to be able to see the band, good sound. Mm-hmm. And there are some venues that are better than others when it comes to a sound. Some notorious venues where the sound sort of bounces around a little bit. And you think, oh, blimey. But it is important. So anyway, so your favourite venues, Brian. Let's have a look from the let's go small to big, shall we? So clubs.
First one that comes to mind for me, and is the Riverside in Newcastle. I probably 1989 to 93, I would have been going to the Riverside. I got to see King's X for the first time in the Riverside.
Here we go.
I'm not. No. We're not going to. This is not going to be a love-in for my favorite bands. But I got this. I got to see King's X in the Riverside. I got to see Glenn Hughes 3 times, twice solo, and then once with Trapeze that we've already talked about, and the Riverside. So the Riverside was just a great little club, great stage, and maybe had a couple hundred people that you could get in. So it was really intimate, and the sound was brilliant. One of the times I got to see Glenn Hughes, he was basically backed by Europe, the band. So Europe were on a hiatus. And it wasn't all of Europe. It was Ian Hockland, the drummer, and the bass player, and Mick McKaylee, the keyboard player. So those 3 guys out of Europe, and then 2 lead guitar players. And basically Glenn came out and played Purple. He came out and played Purple, and lots of his rocky stuff, and he didn't play bass, so he just was lead singer, and that was in the Riverside. And I remember that. I remember actually standing beside the guy from Kerrang who was actually there writing the review, and he was asking me what the songs were. He was going, what song was that? So I actually helped him as he was going through the set. Glenn was doing some new material, some old material, and he did some stuff off "Come to Us," the band from Purple. So I remember standing beside the Kerrang writer at the time and he was asking me which song was that. So for me, Matt, I kick off with Newcastle Riverside. Great venue, as you say, great sound, and there was an intimacy to it as well too. What about you? Yeah. You must have choice in London of loads of clubs.
Well, yeah, of course. Yeah, loads. The one that springs to mind, actually, when we're talking about sort of relatively small venues. So on the tour itinerary back in the day, this is sort of late 70s, 80s, was, and it was always there. And no one really knew where it was, but I knew. If you lived in Norfolk, you knew West Runton Pavilion. Now,
sounds like a cricket team.
Well, it was an interesting venue. It was on the North Norfolk coast, quite bleak.
Yeah.
I mean, Norfolk is not really on the traditional tour route, let's say. The closest the bands came was Ipswich. Occasionally, as I've said before, Iron Maiden, for example, came to the UEA, and plenty of other bands came to the University of East Anglia in Norwich. But that was pretty much it. Mm-hmm. So West Runton was the venue, and I'm not saying it's the best venue, but it's got good memories. I went to see Motorhead there in 1981, I think it was 1, 2, something like that. And it was just after Phil Taylor had broken his neck, Phil Taylor, the Motorhead drummer, and it was called the Broken Neck Tour or something like that. And they played West Runton Pavilion. And a few things come to mind. is that it was the loudest, probably the loudest gig I've ever been to. And everyone will say that about Motorhead because they were ridiculously loud.
Yeah.
So loud that people were, I think they were quite sort of, they were quite affected by the noise. I remember looking over, I was stood behind this huge punk guy with a black leather jacket on who, I remember it vividly, he sang the solo to Since You've Been Gone at the top of his voice. Huge guy, black hair, yeah. Anyway, but it was so loud. People, I think, were being, were finding it hard to cope with. So that was West Runton Pavilion. London, however, you're right. I mean, I've been to loads of venues in London. As I say, some I know more, but the Electric Ballroom in Camden. If anyone's been there, they'll know it. It's a nice venue. You been there, Brian?
King's X, 2011, the recording of the album.
Oh, well, there you go. So you know what a
Fabulous
good venue it is. And it is good. It's got a really high stage. It's quite a long room. Nice, loads of bars, which is always very important. And but yeah, good sound, high stage. I saw Tremonti there. Saw the Alarm there back in the 80s, and Tremonti a few years ago, and then more recently, we mentioned the Answer earlier. Actually, saw them with the Dead Daisies. An interesting double bill.
Yeah.
But yeah, great venue. Good, it's quite small.
Yeah,
but quite intimate. But yeah, nice high stage, good sound, and it smells nice.
Yeah,
Brian, for what I can remember. Anyway, so some good. So there are some good venues around London. There's so many, and luckily most of them are still going. There are one or two that, as I say, bit in the dust, but one or two that have. Most are still going strong. I never went to the Marquee. I was always, the Marquee in Wardour Street, as was. Never went there, and of course, relatively small venue is renowned as being, I think 200 people in there, sweat dripping off the ceiling. It sounds lovely, doesn't it? But I never went to the Marquee, unfortunately. I wish that's one of the venues I wish I'd been to.
I'm quite surprised. I thought the Marquee would have been a venue that you'd had a chance to go to. I do have a story about the Marquee.
Oh, yeah.
I had a friend of mine who went to university in Marquee. He only went to university for I think 3 or 4 years rather than the 15 the 10 that I did. Keith, I played in a band with Keith through school, and he was in London. My mum and dad wouldn't let me go to London because I would have just spent the whole time at gigs, and they're very I'd have just blown my grant going to gigs. And Keith actually was. I can remember when he came, the way when you came back from university and you were going, all the bands that you got to see, and Keith got to see Guns N' Roses at the Marquee on the first. He was there, and I think he was actually working on the crew. So he was actually working in the Marquee. Either he was an engineer he was very technically minded, and he was working the night in the Marquee when Guns N' Roses played. So whenever the album came over to Northern Ireland and we were all into it, Keith had seen Guns N' Roses probably the year before, and we all met up and we were just chatting and stuff. Oh yeah, I got to see them at. So he got to see Guns N' Roses at the Marquee, and I going, oh, what a night that would have been.
Yeah, amazing. So yeah, I mean, I think that the good thing about small venues, and I've been to some great ones in Brighton. The Haunt is in Brighton, saw Temperance Movement there, for example. By their very nature, they're very small, very intimate, and you can get up close and personal, dare I say, with the bands and everything. Obviously, quite often crowded, and as we've said before, at our age, we like a bit of, we like our personal space. Back in the day, as I said before, with long hair, we're all crushed in together. My hair's in row 46 and I'm in row 36 kind of thing. Anyway, let's move on. So the other venues, of course, that are in London, and you and I have been to Hammersmith Odeon plenty of times over the years. Paul Rodgers and Bad Company, of course. Row J we were in back in 2007.
Now, did you know that off the top of your head, or did you check your tickets?
No, I didn't. I don't keep tickets. To be honest with you, I'm not one of those people who keeps the tickets. I've got a few from when I was young.
I've got them all.
I don't really keep. I just remember we were in Row J. I remember you and I getting into the venue because we love Bad Company. I love Paul Rodgers, of course.
Yeah.
And it was a Friday night, and it was summer, And we'd been for a couple of drinks beforehand and, really, really looking forward to the gig. And we looked at our tickets, thought, well, Jay, well, that's pretty close. Mm-hmm. And literally we were, in a way they didn't even need the PA. We could hear them and, beautiful. I remember you and I a couple of times looking at each other thinking, this is just great. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Obviously slightly alcohol fueled maybe, but there you go.
But this is, I was just going to say, this is where you convinced me, whether you were blagging this, but I can remember, because you said, come down from Scotland, we'll go and see Bad Company. And the sell, and this is always a good sell for gigs in London, is usually at that point, Dave Bucket Cowell,
that's right,
was Caldwell. Let me get Bucket's name right. So Bucket was playing guitar in Bad Company at that point. Mick Ralphs wasn't in the band, and you said to me, Mick Ralphs will come out to the Hammersmith Odeon show, and I was like, based there was no reason for saying that. You just thought it's the London show. Mick will come. So I said, right, I'm not going to go and see Bad Company in Glasgow. They would have been playing, I'm sure they'd been playing the SECC. So I came all the way down to London on the promise that Mick Ralphs might play at the Hammy O.
It was a might.
It was a might. And he did.
I know. It was great, wasn't it?
It was fabulous.
I think that's the thing with London. I mean, as we said before, sometimes, UK tours are just London, which is quite sad. But, I've been to quite a few gigs. And funny enough, one we've been to, Michael Schenker and the Scorpions.
Yeah.
Of course, they had a guest come out with them the latter part of the show, didn't they? Yeah. The Scorpions.
Early John Roth.
Exactly. Yeah. As you said, not the best night for Michael Schenker. But great to see the Scorpions. So yeah, Hammersmith Odeon, I think it is up there. It's got a nice slope floor, good, solid, nice sound.
Yeah.
And just the tradition and all the memories kind of ooze out of the walls there. It's just a great venue.
The Hammy O is one of those venues that I always wanted to go to, probably based around Live in the Heart of the City album by Whitesnake, which was kind of recorded there.
Yep.
But Brixton Academy, I have that. So when we went to see Chickenfoot, and the way in which the Brixton Academy, the slope, you mentioned about the Hammersmith Odeon having the slope, the fact that Brixton Academy's...
It's on a hill.
It's on a hill. Which was brilliant, wasn't it? It was just that gig for the sound in Brixton Academy, where you could stand anywhere in the auditorium and get a good view. As a vertically challenged chap that I am, I was on eye level with Joe Satriani, and we got to see everything at stage height. It's the one and only time I was been to Brixton Academy, and I would say that that's up there as one of my favourite gigs. And you get to meet Don Airey.
Exactly, I remember that. You came back all excited from the bar, didn't you? And said, "You never will guess who I've met." Well, of course we can't guess. That's who you told us. You just bumped into Don Airey, didn't you, from Rainbow and various others. You do occasionally, as you say, in London, you do get people sort of jamming. I remember seeing Brian May, I think, jam with Def Leppard at Wembley Arena on the Hysteria tour. Unless I dreamt that. It was talking of Whitesnake, Bernie Marsden came on with Whitesnake relatively recently, obviously long since departed Whitesnake. That was nice, nice little reunion. So yeah, we're very fortunate in London. Loads of venues. Yeah, and most bands always play here. Which is, and as you say, you've made the journey a couple of times over the years.
So I'm gonna. So if we're staying in theatres, I have to give a shout out to Newcastle City Hall.
Yeah.
I've probably sat in every vantage point. I've been in the stalls, I've been in the balconies, I've been balcony right and left, I've been all over the City Hall. I think I saw 21 gigs.
Wow.
In Newcastle City Hall. I saw Black Sabbath there in the Tony Martin days with Cozy and Neil Murray. I got to see, Paul Weller or Whitesnake, even Big Country, Crowded House. You mentioned Def Leppard at Wembley Arena. I actually got to see Def Leppard for the first time on the X tour. Leppard were coming out of the 90s, playing in theatres. Now they're back playing Enormo Dome stadiums in America with Motley Crue and whoever. But to see Leopards in a theatre was just, that was phenomenal. So I have to shout out to Newcastle City Hall. It's my favourite theatre. I'm so pleased I got to see so many great bands.
You just touched upon something there, actually. And I think it's the importance of checking out support acts, opening acts. And I'll tell you why. So, and again, I was reminiscing about 2006 when bands like Soundgarden, I'm not saying they were supporting, but they were on a bit of a, as you said, a comeback. But Muse played the Shepherd's Bush Empire. Now, Muse these days are, as you said,
like stadium band.
Stadium band, headliner, fantastic show. But in those days, playing obviously relatively smaller venues. I've always wondered where Muse started from, because their stage show is just so enormous. So you think, well, you didn't start in the Dog and Duck in Hemel Hempstead, did you? They must have done, obviously. But I think it's, the message is, everyone, when gigs start coming back, please check out the support act, check out the opening acts, because you never know. And likely these are going to be the bands and acts of tomorrow. So, check out the opening acts. As a slight diversion, just to say, big up the opening acts.
Yes.
Am I old enough? Am I too old to say big up?
No. You're
opening
okay.
acts. Are you sure?
No.
All right, let's just go with it anyway.
Go
Anyway, where do we get to? So arenas then. Yeah. So
this is going to be interesting because there's some good venues for arenas and there's some poor.
Yeah. Indeed. Well, you're right. I mean, the ones that come to mind that are almost contrasting, Wembley Arena in London and the O2. Now, the O2 is essentially purpose-built for gigs. It's a huge 18,000 capacity arena in East London, built around the end of the last century, was originally called the Millennium Dome. And it's not everyone's cup of tea, the O2. I like it. I like going to the O2. Have you been to the O2?
I have. I've been lucky enough to see Prince and John Mayer at the O2.
I've seen lots of bands. And Maiden played a few times, and saw AC/DC there, and so on. And a good sound.
Yeah, definitely
good
good
environment.
Sound. Yeah.
And contrast that with Wembley Arena, which again is, I think there's a lot of concrete there. They have improved it over the years, but back in the day, I first went there in '82 to see AC/DC on the For Those About a Rock tour, and the sound, there's a lot of concrete, and the sound sort of bounced around. Still a good venue, but clearly not necessarily purpose built for gigs. But I like the O2. I mean, I'm very comfortable there. It's just up the road, relatively speaking. So I'm very happy. What's not to like?
I've got three, and when we're talking about arenas, I'm going to say what my favorite indoor arena is right from the get go, and is the first direct arena in Leeds, Pearl Jam. I went to see Pearl Jam on my own. At the first,
just you and Pearl Jam and no one else. Wow, that is an intimate gig. Fantastic. I see what you mean. Just you, no gig buddy.
No gig buddy. No. So
where was I then? Why did you call me? One of our mates from up north. What was going on?
I have no idea. Anyway, so I went to see Pearl Jam, and it was my first time ever in the Leeds arena. And Pearl Jam came on just after 8:00. I left the venue, Matt, at 11:30. Bear in mind, nice. I'm driving back to Scotland that night.
Wow.
And Pearl Jam were still playing.
That's amazing, isn't it?
And it was amazing sound. I have to say, of a concretey, new built arena, the Leeds arena, sound-wise, was just phenomenal. So to see Pearl Jam in that environment where they were sound, and do you know what? Sometimes if a band feels the room, and the audience it's a good sound in the audience as well too. I think the band feed off the audience feed off the band if the sound's good, and that was one of those perfect nights. The one of the venues which is getting better for sound is the Hydro in Glasgow, which is a purpose-built arena. But I got to see Alter Bridge shine down in Hailstorm, and I visibly saw Miles struggling with his sound on stage, and you could see he wasn't happy. And we've been to gigs, and you can see the front man either he's not hearing enough in the monitors, or whenever you see your favorite artist looking sideways on a stage, you know something's
pointing upwards.
Yes, pointing upwards,
pointing
or
to their ears,
pointing to their
upwards.
ears, and you could see the poor guy was struggling. So then you went straight into the Telewest Arena. And I got to see the Telewest Arena is probably one of the sheds, as they call it. And it was good. I saw the Manics there. I saw David Bowie.
Wow, really?
Yeah, 1996. Being a gig buddy for a friend, and they said, I've got a spare ticket. Do you want to go and see David Bowie? And I went to see him, and the Bowie was just class. Manics were great. But again,
great band.
Great
we
sound.
don't talk about the Manics that much. They're great band out of Wales, aren't they? And done some great stuff over the years. That Everything Must Go album, terrific stuff.
Birmingham, we've you and I was in the north. I'm in the northeast in Scotland. We should give some a shout out to the middle of the country as well too.
Genting Arena.
Yes.
Yeah, we went there to see Rainbow, didn't we? I think that's the only time I've been to. Is that the old NEC?
Yes.
Yeah. Now called the Genting Arena. I've been to the NEC a couple of times for conferences, but that was the first gig. Good venue, good sound.
I can remember Rich. I can remember the band kicking off Stargazer.
Yeah.
Once Stargazer, once we'd done all of the, Richie'd mucked about, and we'd played little bits of Difficult to Cure, and
that's right.
all that kind of stuff. When we got into the Dio era stuff. And when I can just remember when they played Stargazer, and Ronnie Romero, who's a fantastic singer, and they did that, and you're kind of going, I'm getting chills now thinking about that. And again, sound was good that night.
Yeah, really good. Did he come on that night, Ronnie Romero? He's from South America, isn't he? English isn't his first language. And God bless him. He came on, great singer, as you say, came on and said, good night.
Yes.
And we're all sort of thinking, what do you mean good night? What he meant was good evening, of course.
Yes.
During,
as the band's building up, building up Highway Star.
That's right. All right. He said, good night.
Good night.
Bless him. He did a good show. It was a good weekend, wasn't it?
Brilliant.
Right. So stadiums then. I've been to a few gigs in stadiums, and I think the two that stand out for me, of course, I went to the old Wembley Stadium, and I've been to the new Wembley Stadium to watch gigs. I went first I saw U2 a few times at the old Wembley on the Joshua Tree Tour 87. Great gig. Fantastic. And of course, Wembley Stadium will always be remembered probably for Live Aid as a gig venue. And there's been a few concert films, and obviously the footage of Queen at Wembley. They then played there the year after in their own right. I think Wembley Stadium will always be, the old Wembley as we call it, will always be special for music fans, because essentially you could just picture Queen, you could picture Quo starting Live Aid and so on. But it was it's huge, and it still is. I mean, I've been to new Wembley, saw Metallica there about 10 years ago. Again, they've got it right now. It's not necessarily designed for music performance. It's a sports venue, but it sounds pretty good. I mean, anything outside is always subject to the wind and obviously the elements in general. But Wembley Stadium is good. But I think my favourite venue, because I've got such good memories of it, my favourite stadium venue is Twickenham Stadium in London. And again, I went to see U2 there in about 2007 or something like that. And we got there quite early, queuing up to go in. And the guy said, first X 100 people, you can go in the Golden Circle, which is great. Yeah. And that was what's the Golden Circle? Nowadays they do Golden Circles and whatnot, but you have to pay a bit extra. But we just got let in. It was lovely, and that was a good gig. But my best memory of Twickenham was you and I went to see Iron Maiden there in 2008, and it was great. A good gig. Bruce Dickinson came out, and of course he felt the need to kick a rugby ball into the audience. But what that will always stick in my memory was the fact that we said, right, I'll see you outside Twickenham at 1:00. Maiden were on about 8:00, something like that. And I was still standing on my own outside the pub in Twickenham at like 4:00.
I'm sure there was I had some problems with trains.
It was travel issues. But I started chatting with random people. I was absolutely slaughtered by the time you arrived. I was mullered standing outside the Cabbage Patch. I think it's called the Cabbage Patch. I know it's called the Cabbage Patch. I think it was the Cabbage Patch pub in Twickenham. Of course, there's Maiden fans everywhere. It's great. But the gig was good. But yeah, I've got great memories of Twickenham Stadium. And we were so high up. I don't really remember. We're so high up. It felt like we were outside the stadium. We were kind of, like flying above it because we were in the top row of the top deck.
Yeah.
And it was, but that was great. A great day. And
it only took me 2 pints to be equally as slaughtered as you were.
That's true. Yeah.
You
didn't get sunstroke though.
No, I didn't. And do you know what? For me, my favorite stadium, as well as Twickenham. I really loved what I like about Twickenham. There's loads of people mulling about. You've got the bars open. You've got everybody in black t-shirts. And there's just that degree of everybody hanging out round the stadium. But I always wear a King's X t-shirt to a gig. And I remember a whole bunch of guys from Brazil who just came over and went, "Oh, King's X, And it's lovely that you're just meeting your rock community. And how many people have you met over the years, Matt, where you go and they're wearing a t-shirt from a tour that you went to.
Oh yeah.
And you just go over, which one did you see and who did you, and you chat. So Twickenham had a really good vibe to it. Best ever live sound at an outdoor gig I've ever heard was the Police at Twickenham. I can't be beat. We were on the pitch, and the Police were just, the sound in that stadium was just awesome. So Twickenham, I'm with you. It's just
great.
Can't be beaten. I do like Gateshead Stadium, but the sound just wished around. I lucky enough to see Guns N' Roses with Faith No More in Soundgarden, and again get in early peeps, and I got to see Soundgarden. And then to go and see Bon Jovi supported by Van Halen. Those are the two, two standouts. So yeah,
notable mentions. Before I forget, the Royal Albert Hall, where you were talking about gig buddies. We went to see Dave Gilmour there a few years ago, and I remember you said to me, "Look, I've got a spare ticket for Dave Gilmour." I said, "Okay, great, I'll have it." And then you told me the price. £100. Wow. Okay. I like Dave Gilmour, but I'm not sure I like him £100 worth of Dave Gilmour. It was a great night, wasn't it? Fantastic.
First time ever. First time that I ever had ever been in the Royal Albert Hall, and yeah.
It's a good venue. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but it is, again, one of those fantastically historical venues. And the other one, which is an open air venue, of course, and I mentioned it last time, is the Milton Keynes Bowl.
I knew you'd mentioned Milton Keynes.
Well, it's good. Yeah. I mean, I went there loads of times in the 80s. Saw Bon Jovi there and REM there, and most recently I saw the Foo Fighters there back in 2011, I think it was. But again, a really good venue. I said before, it's a bowl, as the name would suggest.
Yeah,
Milton Keynes Bowl. But again, a bit like you were saying, wherever you are in the auditorium, let's say, you get a great view. So honourable mention to Milton Keynes Bowl and the Royal Albert Hall.
In terms of honourable mentions for me, having begun my gig experiences in Northern Ireland, I have to give a shout out to the Ulster Hall in Belfast, which is a phenomenal venue, and the RDS. The RDS down in Dublin, where I was lucky enough to see U2. I never did Slane, which is a shame. I think anybody who was a music person in Ireland, there was two gigs in the 80s, Matt, that anybody who knew their onions about music, you went to see Bruce Springsteen in 1984 in Slane Castle on the Born in the USA tour, and then the Magic tour in Slane Castle with Queen in 1986. You have no idea how many of my friends have reminded me over the years.
Yeah.
And I wasn't there for a number of reasons. So, yeah.
Mind you, you've seen, I mean, just listing off the gigs that you've been to, blimey. I mean, you've got a very wide taste in music, and, you know, anyone from Bowie to the Police and John Mayer and everything in between. It's all good stuff.
And it's all coming back. I'm so excited. I'm so excited that you know, bands feel confident now that they can put new shows on. It's nice to see. I know people are pushing gigs into 2022, but even those people that have pushed gigs into 2022, I can see those coming off. So I can't wait to be adding more ticket stubs to my wall of gig tickets, Matt, over the next 18 months.
Yeah, and I can't wait to be doing the same, but throwing the tickets in the bin. Maybe I'll start keeping them. And there's a paper, mate. Blimey. No, I know what you mean.
All right.
Right. Should we move on then?
Yes.
So, getting towards the end of the podcast, and what I would say is, anyone who's listening to this, hope you're enjoying it. But come onto Facebook, come onto Twitter, at FTAT Pod, and let us know about your favourite venues.
Yeah.
Everyone has got a favourite for different reasons: memories, smell, slope, all of the above. So please let us know. Right, so it is Hidden Gem time. I'm sticking with that jingle.
Yeah, you appear to be. I haven't come up with a better one, so...
No, well, I think we'll start with it, because I was talking to someone, one of our American listeners, and he sang the jingle back to me. I thought that was quite sweet. He said, Matt, you know what my favourite part of the show is? I said, I don't know. I said, tell me. He said, Hidden Gem time. So I thought, well, there you go. We've got to stick with the jingle. It's a good jingle.
It's a good jingle.
You know,
it's Hidden Gem time.
Exactly, Hidden Gem time. So what have you got for us this week then, Brian?
So when I was thinking about favourite gigs, favourite venues, I can't believe I haven't mentioned this Hidden Gem album in 13 episodes, of which this is episode 14. I can't believe I haven't mentioned this album. This album is from 1982. This album features Pat Thrall on guitar and the legend that is Glenn Hughes on the bass and vocals. My Hidden Gem this episode, Matthew, is Hughes Thrall, which was released in 1982. Pat Thrall was the guitar player in Pat Travers's band. Glenn, obviously, in the early 80s, had moved to Los Angeles, needed a writing buddy, basically found Pat Thrall, put together a musical partnership, produced an amazing album. Hughes Thrall is just a phenomenal album. It's actually produced by Glyn Johns. And we've talked about Glenn Johns in the past with all the stuff that he's done. Amazing album. Should have gone on to greater things, but unfortunately didn't get past, didn't even go on tour. The album didn't really get much promotion. So my Hidden Gem, Matthew, for this episode is Hughes Thrall from 1982.
Very good. Very good. I remember when that came out, actually. An interesting cover, didn't it? I seem to remember.
Yes. Yeah.
I can't exactly remember what it was, but I do remember the art when it came out.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it's a short album. No, it's got one trapeze track on it with but promised so much, Matt, and just fell to bits.
Yeah, sadly.
Yes. What have you got? What's your Hidden Gem?
I've got another book, actually. Because I remember last time you said that I was a prolific reader, and I'm relatively prolific, but I can't not mention one of the best and funniest music books that I've ever read. a book by Andrew O'Neill called The History of Heavy Metal. Now, Andrew O'Neill is a British stand-up comedian, and back in 2017 he published this book, and it is absolutely hilarious. If you're a rock fan or just a music fan in general, you're going to love it. And it's basically his take on the history of heavy metal, strangely enough, from his perspective. So he goes back to the early days through Sabbath and so on, as you might expect. But it's just hilarious. It's laugh out loud funny. And the best thing about it are his footnotes. When you read it, boys and girls, just remember footnote. I told you about the footnotes because the footnotes are what make this book funny. But yeah, just a straightforward The History of Heavy Metal by Andrew O'Neill. And it's one of those books I've given it to. I may have even given you a copy, Brian. It's probably in your bookshelf somewhere to be read. And it's just a masterpiece. So. Please, everyone, go out and buy, download, whatever you do, The History of Heavy Metal, Andrew O'Neill.
Do you know what? for some of the books, maybe maybe one of the things that we will do from because it's very hard for us to put a book on our music playlist.
Well, that's true, actually.
So
yeah.
I think
Shall I read a snippet of it then? Shall I read I should probably have. Do you know what I should have done? I should have brought it with me and read a paragraph from it just to show everyone how funny it is.
What was when we were kids? What was the program on BBC television where you had famous people who would read passages?
Jackanory.
Jackanory, that's it.
Jackanory. Yeah.
You could do a Jackanory.
Could do. Yeah, I think I might get in trouble for copyright if I start to just read portions of his book.
This is why you're good at the legal stuff.
Exactly, we're back in court again, which we don't want to go back there, do we, Brian?
No, we don't.
It didn't end well last time, did it? With the whole names and band names and
festival names.
Festival names. Pretty much everything we've ever come up with is now been through the courts. Anyway, so
for those about to plagiarise, we salute you.
Exactly, but that's not us.
No,
everything we think of comes from our own brains.
Exactly.
Anyway, so yeah, check out that book, everyone. Let us know what you think.
Will do.
I'm sure you're going to love it. Alrighty.
Excellent.
And that's it. Another one done. Another one in the can, as they say.
Yes. Episode 14. Who thought we would get here?
I know, I didn't.
No.
I didn't. I thought we'd be stuck at episode 1. But yeah, 14. And as I've said before, thank you everyone who listens. Thank you everyone who takes the time to send us messages, to sing our jingles back to us, to remind me of things in the show that you've liked. Or again, people say to me quite often, I've started listening to this guy, I read that book. Thanks for your recommendations. We love doing this. Thank you everyone for listening. Really appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely. Matt, you're off on holiday soon. I am. All right. Yes. Have a nice holiday, and when you get back, we will do episode 15. So I shall speak to you soon, and everybody else, we will see you next episode. Rock on. Bye. For those about to pod, we salute you is a Mealy Rogers media production. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.